Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and to another video. If you're new here, thanks for stopping by. My name is Mia, and if you're a returning subscriber, what's good, y'all? It's been a very long time since I posted long form content. I know. I left YouTube, I think, in 2023. Initially because, as you know, I am a television writer and I was having a hard time balancing the work expectations that I had for my job with creating long form content. And so, yeah, I left YouTube in 2023 and then I left social media altogether Q4 of 2024 all the way until pretty much summer or fall of 2025. Like, it was pretty much almost a full year. And the reason why I left during that period is because basically God told me no. Yeah, I personally still wanted to create content and show up online and do all the things, but he said no. Yeah, to the point where I would go to try to post something and get super nauseous, and God knows that I do not like throwing up. So I was like, I hear you. I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna obey. I'm gonna be obedient. And so yeah, I disappeared off of YouTube. I disappeared off of social media for a little while. Like I said, almost a full year. And really because I feel like God was just like, I want your full undivided attention. There was a lot that I was going through in life from 2023 up until really, I would say the beginning of 2026. Life has been real interesting offline. And now I'm in a much better space and am ready to talk about all of the amazing things that God has done in that period of time. But yeah, there was a lot going on in my life, and I just felt like God really forced me to sit down and really face a lot of uncomfortable truths that I had been avoiding. Truths like the fact that I have such a strong need for control, things like my lack of faith, the fact that I didn't know who I was, and the biggest one really being the fact that I didn't love myself, which, yeah, we're going to talk about that. I had been walking through life as what many people would assume or say was a highly confident person and highly successful, but deep down internally, I was very insecure, very lonely, and very anxious. 2023 and 2024 really set up a lot of the fractures in my heart that God then repaired or started to repair in 2025. And the woman that is sitting in front of the camera in 2026 is completely, extremely grateful for all of it. Of everything I went through, I don't regret a single bit of it because it led me to a place of surrendering to God, learning to sit at his feet, and ultimately got me to this place of wholeness and completeness that I have never experienced in life up until this point before. And that's not saying that life is perfect. Like, life is still life and things are still happening. Your girl has been unemployed since November of last year. Yeah, so life is still doing what it wants to do. But in the midst of all of that, I can truly say that I have a peace and a contentment in myself and in God's faithfulness that truly I have never experienced before. And I just want to finally come back and share all of that with you guys. So if you're nosy like me, you want to know, like, girl, what happened? You know, you want the details. And I'm going to tell y'all a little bit of my business, but I'm not going to tell you everything, but I am going to tell you a little bit of my business because it is, you know, important to know the backstory. But also we're going to do things a little bit differently here. You guys know that I am a follower and a believer of Christ. I've talked about it on my channel before, but I don't think I've actually ever, like, you know, did a video where I had my trusty dusty Bibles with me. But I'm going to pull out the Bibles today because deepening my relationship with God is really important to the narrative. So I'm going to be using the Bibles today to just highlight some of the passages that helped me over the years as I was growing my faith with God. Okay, so what happened? Well, my parents filed for divorce in 2024. And that really shook me to my core. Like, if you know me, I am really big on family, and I associate family with stability and structure. And yeah, I just love the whole, you know, I just love everything family. I pray to have a family of my own one day. And as someone who has not historically been good with change, my parents' divorce really set me off kilter. Things had grown discordant in the previous years leading up to the divorce, and as an oldest daughter, I kind of felt like it was my responsibility to try to step in and help where I could in terms of, keeping things afloat, filling in the gaps, and trying to mend certain relationships within the family. But there are some things that are outside of your control, most of which being the choices and the decisions of other people. So when the divorce came, my anxiety came back full force. I had been dealing with anxiety literally since I was a child, but I really had my first major big panic attack back in college. Y'all know that scene in Inside Out 2 when anxiety is at the control panel and she's just trying to fix everything in order to help Riley, and she's moving so fast that she's essentially stuck in time and Joy can't reach her. That scene literally made me cry, because actually it wasn't even a cry, it was like a full-on guttural sob. Which is a good thing that I actually watched this at home and not in the theaters, because clearly I was not prepared for the visceral reaction I was gonna have. But that scene truly hit something in me, because for the first time I was like, that's exactly how it feels like. I lived that. I know what that paralysis feels like. I know where that hyperactivity, that is anxiety, and that is the experience that I had. And you're probably like, okay, why are you bringing up a Disney movie? How does that relate to the story? Because in seeking God in 2024 and 2025, when my parents were going through their divorce proceedings, when a romantic relationship that I wanted didn't pan out the way I expected it to, or the job that I had for 6 years ended, not kind of out of nowhere. We kind of knew it was coming. But there were so many different things that were going on all at once, so many big changes that I was going through, that God had to teach me how to let go and embrace seasons. I don't like endings. I don't like goodbyes, but I had to get to a point where I realized and learned seasons are a part of life. Change is inevitable. And so I'm gonna go to the Bible, in Ecclesiastes 3, where it says, "There's a time for everything, a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace." And then if you drop down to verse 14, it says, "I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it and nothing taken from it. God does it so that people will fear him." And the reason why I wanted to bring that up is because part of what God had to teach me was to trust him in the midst of change, in the midst of new seasons, which brought me to one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible, which is Jeremiah 29:11, which says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Learning to trust that God has a plan for me, and according to Isaiah 43:18 and 19, that he is doing a new thing, and so that I am free to not dwell on the past, has been something that I've had to remind myself daily. God also had to teach me how to love myself. I remember back in 2023, I was having a session with my therapist, and she asked me a question, and it was one of those open-ended questions that therapists ask you where there's a correct answer to the question, but you're not aware that there's a correct answer. And basically the answer to the question was love, or loving myself, or something like that. And again, I bawled my eyes out when I realized that we could have gone the entirety of the session, 2 weeks later, come back to the session, and my answer to the question would not have been love. It didn't even dawn in my mind that love or loving myself was the answer to said question. I didn't realize that I didn't love myself until she asked me a question about it and I couldn't answer it. And learning to love myself wasn't something that just happened overnight once she brought it to my attention. Like, it didn't change instantly. It's taken two low-key 3 years to get to a point where I am starting to like really love and embrace myself. And it's only because I have been learning to see myself how God sees me and anchoring my identity in who He says I am. And so focusing on the truths that He calls me to, which is that I am His child and that I was bought at a price, or, you know, that I am free of condemnation forever and I am complete in Him. And there's a host of other things. Once I started learning to love myself, I stopped people pleasing. I stopped trying to do everything in my power to make people like me. I stopped basing my identity on being a good daughter or a good sister or a good friend, being in a relationship, being, you know, successful in my career. And after a season of God stripping away every external thing that I used to fill internal emptiness, what came out of it was a stronger sense of self and a stronger sense of, honestly, what came out of it was true self-love. Like, you glow differently when you actually love yourself from a real place and it's not artifice. I remember I had started reposting on social media back in like February or March of this year. And I met up with one of my friends named Kim. And she said, there's a different energy to your posts now. Like, you just look so happy. And hearing her say that made me misty because like I actually felt different. And for the first time, my internal world, like how I felt inside, matched or aligned with the external persona or just the way I was showing up externally, like online and just in real life. Like, even in real life, I would get random compliments from people at the store. They were just like, oh, you're just like, the amount of times random people that I didn't know or even people that I did know would say like, oh, you're glowing, was insane. And the only difference between me before and me after was that I love myself. So maybe I'm assuming that I was carrying myself differently and people were able to pick that up. But aside from, again, regardless of whether anybody noticed it externally or complimented me on whatever, like, I truly felt internally so at peace and so comfortable in my own skin and just truly knew who I was for the first time ever. I can show up on social media comfortably now and not feel like it's a performance or a mask anymore. And to be completely honest, I don't care what y'all think. Like, and I'm not saying I'm not saying that in a malicious way, but I am truly more secure in myself, and that to the point where I'm like, if people are interested in what I have to say, great. If they're not, also great. Like, I'm content either way. And that is something that I couldn't authentically or truthfully say when I had been, you know, showing up online before. And that leads me to the last portion of the video, which is I want to talk about my why. Because I was catching up on old comments, on like old YouTube comments from previous videos that I missed when I wasn't posting long form. And somebody left me a comment and asked, why am I on social media, or why I'm on YouTube, I think was the question. And that video that they commented under was specifically with me talking about being a TV writer. So the crux of the question was, well, oh, if you're a working writer, like, why are you on social media? Are you just doing it for extra cash or whatever? And the answer to that question for me is like multifaceted. Like, there's a couple different answers to it. For one, I have been on social media since I was in college. Like, I've had this YouTube channel since college. I also used to run a fashion blog that is still technically up right now. It's going to be undergoing some changes soon, but I have just always been someone who is interested in exploring my many passions and then just sharing that interest with other people. So that is why I started my social media. But after going on this journey with God over the last few years, I realized that we are called to be a witness to God's goodness on earth. I want anyone looking at my YouTube or my other social media platforms, or even the work that I produce in the entertainment industry, and think, wow, God is amazing. Like, he is so good. And God has already been at work making that possible, even with the show that I was working on previously, The Chi. My aunt is a fan of The Chi, and she called me one day after she watched an episode I had written and told me, you know, I can always tell when you've, almost always, she said, I can tell when you have written an episode of the show before the credits roll because they pray. And I was like, oh, really? And like, I was like, it made me stop and think, because I was like, oh, I didn't realize that there was a pattern, you know, to my creativity and the balance of my creativity working in the entertainment industry, but also with my faith. So the fact that she was like, yeah, you know, you in the episodes that you've written, there's either a sermon or they pray, or it has some sort of, you know, faith-based element to it. I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. But to a point, it is true, because I know I would often bring up, you know, the Bible, God, things like that in the room, because there were also other believers in the room as well. So it aided to the story, because one of the characters was a preacher, and all the things. You guys get it. But that just goes to show that, like, I realize now that I want my life to be a living testament to God's sovereignty and his love for you, and how trusting in both of those things will bring you so much peace. This is not about me. It was never about me, but like, truly, I realize now that the platforms that I have, whether it's one person watching or, you know, the 3,000 subscribers that we got right now, like whoever it is, I just want whoever is looking at my content to see God through whatever I am putting out, whether or not I directly say his name or not. And that doesn't mean that you have to be perfect. That doesn't mean that I have to be perfect, because I am not perfect. I make mistakes every single day. But by committing to walking with God every day and making an effort to look like Christ, you'll find that he grants you this undeniable sense of peace and an absurd amount of joy that makes no sense to people who are not experiencing it for himself. Like, I have not worked since November of 2025. It is currently August 2026. I have not worked since. And yet this is the most content and fulfilled and happy and peaceful I have felt ever in my life. Like, truly living a peace that surpasses all understanding, because what? So yeah, that is why I am here. I will be sharing my journey in the hopes that anything you see makes you curious about trying God for yourselves. And this video is actually going live on my birthday. So that's my birthday wish. I wish that at the end of the day, you know that God loves you and that there is nothing you can do to change that. Yeah, there's literally nothing you can do to change that. Moving forward, I will be posting here on the channel on Sundays and potentially on Wednesdays too. I have a backlog of content that I was recording in 2025, because I never lost the desire to create content. Like I said, it's just a fun hobby for me. I'd be recording and documenting everything, but I wasn't actively posting for a while because God was like, sit down. And I was like, yes, I'm gonna be obedient. So when he told me to take a step back, I did what he told me to do. But now I feel like, you know, I'm in a better space and I have sought him and he has given me permission to proceed. So let's hope y'all are willing to come along for the ride. Yeah, life is, man, being an adult is crazy. But through the midst of it all, God is good and he is going to get the glory. So as always, thank you guys for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see y'all in my next one. Bye.